Alright, SlimmBob here, time for a... Don't know why I just did that. It's time for another review. And this time we're talking about a game. Yes, we are. This game... who's done that? Sorry, I've just noticed somebody's using a DVD downstairs. They put it in wrong place. I'm going to have to change this because that's going to bug me through the entire review. I'm sorry, I have everything in alphabetical. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You see, this is why I could never work in a library because I'd be too much of a perfectionist. Anyway, I'm talking about a game, and this game has took me by surprise, and it was bought for me 11 months ago for my birthday. And sorry Ryan, it took me this long to actually play this game. I had a lot of things, and I played a bit at his house, and I'm like, it looks alright. And now I've played it, and oh my god. This game, talking about Nier, and now you're all saying, what's Nier? I don't even remember what that is. And you're looking at that, you're thinking, Square Enix? Could it be an RPG, a JRPG? It's like, I didn't hear about that, it must have been shit. Well, that's because it didn't get very good reviews, did it? For some fucking reason. What the fuck were they expecting? It winds me up because it's a really good game. Nier is it's a bloody masterpiece is what it is. In terms of storytelling it is. In terms of what it puts the player through emotionally. Just the ambition. I've never known a game, and it mindfucks you, this game, in a similar way to Metal Gear Solid 2. That's the perfect game to compare it to, actually, because Metal Gear Solid 2, that's the polarising Metal Gear. And this will polarise players for the exact same reason, because it is very, it's an action RPG, right? The graphics aren't very good. In terms of categories, let's look at it. Graphics aren't very good. They do kind of look, in a way, like Deadly Premonition. They do look like they could be a PS2 game. No, they're not half as bad as Deadly Premonition. That's a bit unfair, but the environments are pretty plain. There's not much detail to them. The enemies are just shit. Well, they're called shades. They're like black, there's not much detail on them, but there's a reason for that. And to be honest, it's a post-apocalypse. It is supposed to be a wasteland, it's supposed to be barren, and the whole environment is supposed to have been ravaged completely, and not in the same way as Fallout. You know, Fallout, it's just a nuclear holocaust, this is different. But you wouldn't know that unless you've looked it up. That's one of the other criticisms with this game, which in a way, it was what spurred me on to... That's what made me love it in a way. A lot of games don't do that. You play the game and that's it, you forget about it. But once you beat this game, you get curious about this universe, and there's a lot of information. And we should have got this information. They released a companion called Grimoire Nier. It's a book. It has loads of information about the universe. And that was supposed to be a companion for this game, and it were only released in Japan. So if they'd have released that over here with every copy of the game, there'd be a lot less confusion to do with this game. It really does. Once you've read that, it's a completely different game once you've read that. I've never known a universe so fully realised but so subtle, you know, it tells itself. Really amazing. But yeah, in terms of presentation, character models are really good. Very interesting designs. I think Kaine's design, I understand why it's like that, but they went a bit over the top. They did. She wears like a nightie and she's bandaged, which makes sense. The bandage stuff does make sense. And the way, you know, the way she tries to, you know, she basically shows her sent off, that does make sense completely. It's just the way, in a friggin' nightie, all the way through the game, you're battling demons for 30 hours. And she's wearing them same bloody clothes, and it just kind of, I don't know, it's a bit jarring, I guess. But that's the thing with it. Every character in this game is eccentric. Every character has their own quirks, and they're just so unique, these guys. It's right weird. It's weird to see a JRPG. They're not really archetypes. You think they are, but there is no good guy in this game. There is no bad guy. Everybody is just a person that's got a reason to do what they do. And that's not something you realise until second playthrough. I might do another video about story for this game. There's a hell of a lot to talk about with story. There's a lot of theories going about, and there is a lot of talk about this game online. I've noticed that there seems to be a cult following online, which I'm really happy about. I'm glad this game's found an audience. It's very thought-provoking. To me, this is the direction. If Square Enix wants Final Fantasy to become more mature, modern, and to be taken seriously, this is what they got to do. They have to make a mature story that tackles adult themes, that doesn't fucking bullshit around, where if people get killed by a wolf, they get mauled to death. It's not just fireflies like in Final Fantasy X, you know. It's not the live stream taking the energy from the bodies, you know. It's pure, it's visceral. And that's what I really like about this game. When people get stabbed in chest, blood goes everywhere. They're bleeding out their mouths, they die. And it's so refreshing to see that. I'm surprised it were 15 actually, this. And the thing is, that's the thing with presentation, you can tell they didn't have much of a budget for this game. Well, you know they didn't anyway, because for one, one of the endings were removed. They didn't have time to finish it, and they didn't have resources. And that is very disappointing, because you get the final ending, and it's so sad, and in a way, it's one of the most proud moments you'll ever have in a game. I don't know how else to describe it without spoiling it. But the way it ends, to me, this game needed a companion game, like Final Fantasy X-2, something to just act as a prologue. That's the thing with Final Fantasy X-2, that game should have been a few hours long. None of that bullshit, getting 100%, because you buy that game to see Tidus come out from water. That game should have been a lot shorter and just been a journey for Yuna to go to Farplane and to find out what could, beat the boss or whatever, and then he comes back. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about Nier. And you're going to find this review is going to be fucking disjointed as shit, because it's a very difficult game to describe. The sound design, in terms of sound effects, it's pretty basic for hack and slash sort of gameplay, but the actual music, I've never known a soundtrack be constructed in such a unique way. Like for instance, there aren't many themes in this game. There's lots of variations depending on situation, but they do this very subtle thing, like you go into one area, like you go into Northern Plains, you get this great big orchestra. It's really just wants you to go and explore, and it really drives you on. Then you go to the next area, and a couple of instruments are removed, so it becomes a bit softer, a bit more sinister. Then you go into the next area, and it slowly goes back, and then you get these sad undertones. And I have never known a game do that so well, like just change the mood with the exact same track you've been listening to. The way these songs are constructed, the way they're constructed gives them so much possibility and so much depth. I've never known a soundtrack do it in the really beautiful songs. It's one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a while, actually. I mean, this year, I'm trying to think, it's the only this year that's been this good. I mean, Ni no Kuni's had an alright soundtrack, but, that were pretty... Let's be honest, it were a beautiful game, but the design for the world and the music as well, it were a generic JRPG, whereas this has a very distinct sound to it. It's very rare to listen to a song from a soundtrack for a game and those emotions come flooding back instantly. You know what I mean? Like, when I listen, there's one tune from Kingdom Hearts that always gets me. Well, there's two. Dearly Beloved. Whenever I hear that, I tear up a bit. Or like Tazanakand. Things like that, it brings back so many memories, and I think this is going to be one of them games. Even now, I just listen back to some of the soundtrack. There's so much pain in this game, so much anguish, nothing goes right. You get one victory, and then so much goes wrong. And you think, how can this happen? How is this justified? And then you do your second playthrough, And this is where the genius in this game comes in. Let's move on to the story, shall we? In your second playthrough of this game, it's completely different. Imagine it's... I'm trying to compare it to some films. Something like A Clockwork Orange. Because A Clockwork Orange, you watch it first time and it's really surreal and it's very difficult to understand. Second time, you get the fact that it's all in Alex's mind. Everything that you see. And once he goes to prison, you know, once reality hits, it's a completely different film. Something like I Am Legend. I'm talking about with the book ending, right? When all the way through the film, he's the victim all the way through the film. Get to the end, it turns out he's the monster. He's been experimenting on sentient beings, on people. And you didn't know that until the end. So the second time you watch it, you're watching a completely different film. Like Shutter Island. I could go on, but Nier is like that. I've never known a game do that. In a way, Metal Gear Solid 2 did as well, thinking about it. Because all the way through that game, you're playing it first time, just thinking, oh, I'm on my mission. This is a bit like Shadow Moses, but whatever, it's just lazy development. And then you play it the second time and you realise you're seeing it from the Patriots' point of view, the second time. But then again, morally there's no problem with that. You're still doing the same mission. Nobody gets hurt really, do they? You're just killing these mercenaries because they are an actual literal threat, aren't they? In this game, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying it becomes morally ambiguous. On the first playthrough you start to realise Nier's going a bit mad towards the end. And in a way, all these people that you work with, they all look like bad guys. I'm not saying they are bad guys, that's not the twist. I'm just saying they don't look like traditional heroes. And the villains, there's no real villain. You're just trying to find a cure for your daughter. And the way it all comes together on the second playthrough, you have to play, if you buy this game, you cannot complete it and then fucking turn it off. You have to keep playing 3 or 4 times, get every ending. You gotta get the full experience. There's no other game I've played that has given me that feeling of doing a boss battle and hesitating and stopping and wanting to put down my controller, just making me think while playing the game. There's plenty of films where you finish watching the film and you're like, alright, yeah, that's actually made me think about things in life. Whereas this game, you're playing this game and you're actually experiencing that as it's happening. It's a really, really clever game. So what's the plot? I'll give you a brief rundown. You start off in, I think, 2053 or 61, I can't remember which. You know, fucking close. The world's ended, right? You got this old guy, I'd say old, 39, and he's with his daughter in these ruins, and these monsters show up. And he beats the shit out of them, but he can't win. So what he does, he accepts the power of this book that's just lying about, Grimoire Noir, right? And suddenly he's got magic, so he's beating the shit out of these, going, ah! He's killing all these shades like Kratos. And then his daughter touches the book because she don't want him to suffer and all that, and she dies. His daughter dies. Cuts to 1,300 years later in the future, and then this guy, Nier, he's with his daughter, and she's got a disease called the Black Scroll. So the whole point of the game is you trying to save your daughter, trying to cure her disease. Everything you do is to cure that disease. I think that's why I really like this game. The only other game where I've had that sense of urgency, alright, there's 2. Mass Effect 3. I don't know why I'm doing that. Sorry, I'm not insulting you. Mass Effect 3 and Walking Dead, especially Walking. I'm just fucking insulting you constantly. Fucking Mass Effect 3 and fucking Walking Dead, dickhead. I'm not insulting you. Walking Dead, that's a big one, isn't it? Because all the way through that, Clementine. I have to let you go because I have to protect Clementine. You're a liability. Fuck off. I have to protect Clementine. All the way through that game, everything you do And when it finally comes to that climax, you have to make an ultimate decision for Clementine. And this is the same. Everything's for Yona. And the things you have to do, you might not think out of them first go. But when you look back, and when you're forced to relive that on your next playthroughs, that's when it starts to click, and that's when you start to realise how important is it. And you have to keep telling yourself that it's for Yona, it's for Yona. Just, in terms of gameplay, let's move on to gameplay. I don't want to go on about story too much, even though I have, and it's the main draw of the game. So let's talk about gameplay. If you want to know more about story, if you don't mind spoilers, I will get into heavy spoilers in that video. I'm going to do a video talking about the story. So, though I advise you to buy it first, don't fucking watch that video. It has a very complicated story. You won't get it all in the game anyway. You have to look things up. So, but I'm moving on. Gameplay. It's an action RPG, hack and slash. Could easily just be an hack and slash, and I advise people playing it, play it on hard. Don't play it on normal, because your enemies don't level up with you on this game. So you'll get to planes. You have to move through the planes a hell of a lot. It gets to a point where your enemies, you can kill them in one hit, and it's too easy. So I advise you to play it on hard. It's not a difficult game. It's very, very fluid controls. When I heard about all these complaints, I assumed that it were... Usually it's because of controls, because let's face it, I don't mean to be bad to Japan, but a lot of people have complained about Japanese games not evolving like Western games have in terms of controls. Like, you play something like God of War, it's just so smooth. I mean, only Platinum Games have really recaptured that and got that spot on with games like Bayonetta. But it isn't. It's a very smooth, it's very fun, it does exactly what you want. The controls are great. It has your skills level up really well. There's lots of room for experimentation, which I like. There's lots of unlockable weapons. Unfortunately, like, improving your weapons is a bit of a chore. And this is the big flaw in this game. Fetch quests, fetch quests, fetch quests, fetch quests, fetch quests, fetch quests. Constantly. Lord, just all the time. So my advice, only do them if you need a bit of money. Other than that, avoid them completely. You don't need to do them. You only need to do them to get a couple of weapons for your final ending, because to get the final ending you need to collect every weapon in game. So to get that ending, get all weapons, but don't do any other quests other than them. And it'll tell you, the game will tell you that you need to get, once you're ready to get that ending. So you'll have plenty of time, you'll be able to plan it and all that, so don't worry about it. Just don't do fetch quests. You don't need to. You'll get money just scavenging. You can sell all that shit and recoup your money that way. There's so much crap. It's a bit like Fallout, where you're just collecting crap all the time. You'll find a sword that you like and stick with it. So don't worry about it. Just get on with story. It's paced well if you just stick to the story. It has a lot of twists and that, so just stick with that and immerse yourself in that story. Otherwise you're just going to be running about like a div for hours and hours and hours and not enjoying yourself. Because I was doing that for the first few hours and I weren't keen on it, and then I just stopped, got immersed in story and kept doing that. So I advise you just skip the fetch quests completely. So yeah, that's your gameplay. The one thing I do like is it does this habit of randomly switching genres, like randomly turning into, like, I don't know, like tributing other genres. Like at one point it becomes like an isometric dungeon crawler, you know, like a Diablo sort of thing, randomly, just for one mission. And then there's other times you go into a mansion which has fixed camera angles and stuff. And I honestly think, well, I've read an interview, apparently they plan to make it a bit more faithful, let's say, to the games they were trying to emulate. So I think it would have had like tank controls and the gameplay would have changed, which is a shame. I would have liked to have seen that, but it still works. But it's a nice little tribute, and they even have, I couldn't believe this, they have text adventure. sections in this game. Fucking text adventure. Oh, I can't remember the last time I played a text adventure game. Jesus Christ. But it is very varied. It is like Deadly Premonition, where it's on its own wavelength completely. And not everyone will get that wavelength. They really won't. That's not a bad thing, you know. The only other thing, AI is pretty bad. You don't need your companions anyway. You're way more powerful than them. That would have been a good thing, actually, to make them seem more useful in battle, your companions. Usually, they actually make stuff worse, because you're doing a combo on an enemy, and then blooming Kaine will shoot these projectiles, and it'll knock the enemy flying, so you don't get to finish your combo in end. Things like that. But if the AI could have done with some work, the pathfinding's atrocious. There's one part of the game, it's not really an escort mission, but you can't stray too far from one of your companions during this part of the game. And they get stuck behind boxes, like, all the time, and it's fucking right annoying. Luckily it's a short section, so you don't have to worry about that again. And when you do your New Game Plus, you skip that bit entirely, so it's fine. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's a great game. In terms of longevity, yeah, I can see myself replaying this just to try and notice new things. That's something games don't get a lot of the time. You play it and you've seen everything and that's it. This is one of those games, every time you play it, it'll be a new experience. You'll see different things. You'll learn something new about the world. And that's something I find amazing. That's something I thought I'd never... Well, I knew I'd see it in a game, but I could have played this 3 years ago, for fuck's sake. But yeah, my final verdict for Nier. This is biased, right? This is a biased review. For me, this is a 9. Because I got one of my greatest gaming experiences out of this. One of my most memorable. For normal people. For people that aren't as eccentric as me. It's hard to... This thing is, a story could do with some clarification in game. It's unfair to expect people to go online searching for a book that was not released over here. So for people who aren't as tolerant, maybe, I'll give it a 7. Because the story's really strong. The gameplay is fun, but there are some flaws. You know, the graphics aren't great. The fetch quests are tedious. The AI needs work. I'd like to see a director's cut of this, actually. Maybe get that fucking final ending in, because that sounds depressing like the rest of this game. That's the thing with this game. It's one of the most depressing games you'll ever play. If you want something upbeat and you want a good JRPG, play Ni no Kuni, right? If you want something that will test your balls, right? Fucking play Nier. And even if you just want a fun action game, I mean, if you can get it cheap, it's worth it. I mean, 12 quid, 15, even 15 quid, it's worth it. I think that's why this game works, actually. It kind of, you start playing, you're like, oh, this is a cool, like, innocent Japanese game. You know, something I would have played on PS2. I know what to expect. But no, it throws your balls in the fire after that very quickly. Just little things like, just Kaine's character, you know, you see her first time, you're like, God, she looks ridiculous. Well, she's pretty fit though. I wonder what she looks like if...
That's a dick!
Never mind. See, that's a spoiler. I should have waited. I've spoiled that for you. In fact, I didn't, because bloody first thing... If you search for Nier online, that's fucking first thing that comes up. It's fucking spoiled it. That's something you'll learn in second playthrough, not first. But that's something like that though. Any other blooming game would just put that in for the sake of it. But they work it into story in this game. How the fuck? It's central to Kaine's character, and every character has so much depth. Friggin' Nier, 9 out of 10 for me, 7 for ordinary folk. But if you really want a different kind of Japanese game that it has its own rules completely, it completely invents its own rules, and it works from the right areas, from the story to the soundtrack to the fun gameplay, it works. So it's a 9 for me, a 7 for you Western folk, but I don't care, I love Nier, it's some of my top games now, it's that good. Do you know what's tragic about it? Fucking developer went bust after. 3 months after they made this game, they were going to make another one, and the developer doesn't exist anymore. Apparently Square Enix is gathering some of that team back to make Drakengard 3, but it's not the same. I want Nier. In fact, would another Nier work? I don't think it would. That universe really concluded itself after this, so that's kind of refreshing to actually see something that doesn't need a sequel. The most you get out of a sequel is like an epilogue. That's about it. Do you know what would be good actually? An anime, like just an OVA, 2 episodes. Pardon me, 2 episodes. There you go. That should conclude Nier, and that would be a good idea. I'd love to see something like that. No, actually, it wouldn't work, would it? Because this guy on the front is only in our version. In Japan, Nier is a 16-year-old, and Yona is his sister, his younger sister. Whereas in our version, and I honestly think this is better, this is just closer, this is more down to earth, is a father, you know, trying to save his child. To me, the whole 16-year-old saving the world thing has been done to death. The whole appeal in Nier is that it flaunts the rules of what you expect. It completely reshapes what you expect from these kind of games. So the fact that he's a 40-year-old bloke and he runs fast. I've heard that apparently in Japanese version, young Nier runs slower than old Nier. And their excuse, the developer said, well, old Nier has longer legs. That was their actual statement as to why he runs faster in our version. I thought that were hilarious. They're funny, them interviews, by the way. If you ever get to look at some developer interviews for this game, they are really funny. They're just completely just taking piss all the time. Just taking piss out of each other. Just having fun with it, and just really down to earth, really. It's just very good. I love Nier. It's opened a new world, and the discussion you get online, the interpretations, it's worth playing to get part of that, and it's transcended video games. It's become its own thing now, its own mythology, and that's what great video games do, you know. So yeah, I hope you let us know what you think if you played it, and if not, I hope I've raised a bit of awareness. I hope I've convinced people, because it's a shame that games like this get overlooked, but there we go. In a world full of sequels and remakes, it's just refreshing to get some standalone, one-off, there you go, and still stand on its own and still be really good. But yeah, anyway, this is SlimmBob, thanks for watching, and goodbye.
That's a dick.